Hi, this is Kimberly from Pixels and Pills. I'm here live at the ePatient Connections Conference in Philadelphia. I'm here with Jeff Greene. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, too. So how are you enjoying the conference so far?
So far, so good. I think it's brought an interesting mix of both patient advocates together with some from industry. And I've been following the Twitter feed, and some of the patient advocates have some very interesting things to say. And I think we in the healthcare industry need to listen.
So, Jeff, talk a little bit about the work you do for HealthEd.
So I work in our strategic services group, and much of my job is focused on developing and finding innovations to help our patient educators get their messages and programs out to a wider swath of patients. So I spend my day, looking for cool ideas, writing PowerPoint decks, doing research, and spending a fair amount of time actually on the social web, looking into what patients are talking about in conversations.
Great. So yesterday you presented, and it was a really great presentation.
Thank you.
And you talked a little bit about the patient journey and how to translate that model to the web. Can you sort of reiterate your points on that subject?
Sure. So the patient journey, just to understand, is a construct. It's a way of looking at how patients, and we've all been patients at one time or another, and how you progress through various stages of a disease. In chronic conditions, there tend to be certain phases that jump out. For example, one of the common phases that we'll see in a patient journey is known as engagement. It's the point where the patient finally says, I'm taking control of my condition, I'm going to start to make some choices and try and do whatever I can to help. Oftentimes that comes after a denial phase, and many of us have relatives who've been there or we've been there ourselves, also a struggle. And so by developing actually an illustrated journey, like we actually draw out and create a journey based on insights qualitatively from what patients are talking about, you actually get to see in one fell swoop a thumbnail picture of what the landscape looks like, where there are barriers to treatment, and where there are opportunities for a client to take some leverage.
It's really interesting stuff. Also, you explained the difference between social media listening and social media learning, which I thought was a really important and interesting point for people to learn. Can you also talk about that?
Sure, definitely. So you took good notes in my presentation. Thank you. So social media listening, and this is all semantics, that's what we call it in industry. You're listening to patient conversations. So there's an awful lot of vendors out there who, they have monitoring programs and they give you all these fancy quantitative graphs and charts. A story I shared with the audience was that once upon a time, I was sitting in a presentation where a major pharma company had one of these listening vendors providing a report to them on what they heard, except the volume of conversations in this particular niche disease state, and more disease states are going to be niche, right? Everything is not a giant mass market anymore. Well, those conversations were so slight that you really couldn't get a lot of good quantitative information anyway. And the pharma company actually dismissed their vendor. What we think is a much better strategy is to listen and hear those conversations, hear what the patients are saying, and extract insights, which is what our health educators are at HealthEd are so good at doing because they have that category expertise and that training, and use that to kind of build the breadcrumbs that make up a patient journey.
That's great. So finally, what were some of the highlights of the conference for you so far?
Highlights. Well, I think John Richmond has definitely taken over as the pharma comedy king, so I'd have to give him a shout out. But I also think there was a patient advocate who was a blogger, and she has RA and MS, and she was really kind of telling the pharma industry that they can't just do a program and then think of it like a marketing campaign and walk away when it's done. And it was very powerful because healthcare may not want to hear that lesson, that what you do to patients actually matters to them and has impact on their lives. If we don't, as an industry, patients are going to find their own ways, and they're already doing it, of connecting, of finding information. They're doing it on Wikipedia, they're doing it on all sorts of channels. And I just think her words are really important, made an impact on me, and it's something I'm going to bring back to my team.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking with us, Jeff.
Thank you.
And this is Kimberly from Pixels and Pills signing off from the ePatient Connections Conference in Philadelphia.